You're born, you spend your childhood getting education, learning some skills, you go to university or trade school, or even if you don't, you ultimately start working. You work a 9 to 5 or have your own business, get married, start a family maybe, or have some pets, and at the age of 60, 65, or even 70, retire and live the retirement life. This is the average life lived by many people across the Western world, but is this all there is to it? Is this the purpose of life? Most people would say no, and there's an entire community of people now looking to address this, breaking the mold, and trying to escape this routine by achieving financial freedom. The FIRE movement, or financial independence, retire early, is a lifestyle and financial philosophy aimed at achieving financial freedom far earlier than the traditional retirement age. A conventional 9 to 5 life or a business requires working till you're 65 or even older, but people who follow this philosophy want to retire maybe even in their 30s or early 40s. There's no set age, they just want to retire earlier than that 65 or 70-year-old age that we're all accustomed to. And they dedicate their entire lives to this relentless pursuit of early retirement to then pursue passion projects like traveling the world or being a creative because they believe that that is the true purpose of life, self-fulfillment and attainment. But the steps to financial independence and retiring early are not easy. Is it worth it though? Is early retirement the true path to happiness? Before we dig into that, we need to analyze what the FIRE movement actually is. The first component is financial independence. Essentially, when a person has saved and invested enough money so that the returns or passive income from those investments can cover their living expenses, they've achieved financial independence. That means that they no longer need to rely on active income, quote unquote, like a job or a business, a salary, or profits to support their lifestyle. Instead, they can live off of returns from investments. To achieve this financial independence, the first tenet they adhere to is saving aggressively. This is a cornerstone of any FIRE philosophy. According to a 2023 study by the Economic Policy Institute, the median savings rate for Americans is approximately 8.5%. FIRE enthusiasts aim to save 50% or more of their earnings. That is more than 5 times the average American. Some of these individuals aim to save as high as 70% of their income. And how they do this is a combination of things. The first and foremost thing is budgeting. They have detailed budgets to identify areas where expenses can be minimized, allowing for a greater savings rate. This requires a lot of sacrifice, including maybe not buying that car that you really love because that would be $40,000 more than you can afford. Maybe not eating out as much as you would like, just because that $500 a month in food costs extra could be the difference in you retiring early, amongst other things. This also goes into living frugally, making choices that are deliberate to minimize expenses. We've talked about expense reduction. There also has to be cost-effective living, using public transportation, choosing a more affordable housing option. Maybe even if you can afford a big house, you downsize and go for a condo instead, just because you can put that extra money towards your investments. And perhaps the biggest thing is avoiding any sort of debt, especially high interest debt like credit card debt and car payments, the two primary high interest debts for an average American household. And you might think that a savings rate this high is essentially impossible, but a 2023 report by CNBC found that individuals adopting and shifting towards a frugal lifestyle found that they could reduce living expenses just by living frugally by up to 50%. Furthermore, the Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that the average American household spends about 30% of their income on housing. Followers of the FIRE community aim to spend significantly less, sometimes even under 15%. And when rent is your biggest cost, these savings add up, leading to that higher savings rate. A common question or misconception here is that if you spend less, your quality of life falls. That might be true if you're not having enough meals or if you're cramming yourself in a very tiny apartment, but the thing to note here is that a lot of these expenses that people have are not really necessary. Do you really need that $80,000 SUV? Do you really need that $2 million house with an $8,000 to $9,000 a month mortgage? Or can you afford living in a condo if you're a family of 3 or 4, controlling yourself and living frugally for 10 or 15 years that is going to have big dividends later on in your life? In fact, a Bankrate research justifies this argument. 60% of FIRE followers believe that living frugally has actually improved their overall quality of life by reducing financial stress. Stress leads to a lot of disease, both mental and physical. And not just that, if you're making certain choices like walking more or eating healthier by eating at home, it seems logical that you would be overall more healthy. Saving is not enough though. Before we dig deeper, if you're enjoying this video, please smash the subscribe button and the like button if you like learning more about money, how to make more or save more, or just understand it better. Followers of the FIRE community and lifestyle also believe in investing their money, mainly to generate that income once they actually retire. And the number one source of doing this is through index funds. Index funds track a specific market index, such as the S&P 500, or the 500 biggest companies in the United States of America. These include companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google, companies that we all use, and also other companies like Pepsi, P&G, and other companies in the manufacturing industry. They provide a broad market exposure, limiting your risk potential. And by buying ETFs, you also have low fees and historically strong returns. For example, the S&P 500 has returned 10% annually on average over the last 40 years. That is not 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, that is 4 decades and counting now. And with an expense ratio of as low as 0.03% sometimes, that means that you actually get to keep most of your money, unlike mutual funds where the fund managers take a large part of your investment. Another less common way to do this is through real estate. This generates passive income through rental properties and also through potential appreciation in the property value. Although finding cash flowing rental properties nowadays is not that easy, real estate investments can yield returns of up to 8% depending on market conditions. If you're interested in companies that are on the stock market that invest in real estate, you can also invest in real estate investment trusts or REITs. These are corporations that buy real estate and lease them out and earn through rental income, and you can get a share of that if you invest in these companies. So now that you've saved and invested, your investments have been growing, how do you actually retire? How do you turn these investments into money that you can buy things from actually? This is where the 4% rule comes in. The 4% rule suggests that withdrawing 4% of one's investment portfolio annually can sustain a 30-year retirement. This principle has been back-tested and has stood the test of time with the math backing that. So for example, if your rent plus food and other expenses like travel, clothing, etc. turn out to $30,000 a year, you will need $750,000 invested in the stock market in a low-cost ETF to support yourself for 30 years. This is because the stock market on average grows 10% a year. And if you only withdraw 4%, keeping in mind 2 or 3% inflation, your portfolio still gets room to grow that modest 3 to 4%. And by withdrawal here, we simply mean selling a percentage of your portfolio. If you decrease this withdrawal rate to 3%, you can sustain an even longer retirement, since that gives more room for your portfolio to keep on growing. Although then you would need significantly more money to actually retire, at around $1 million. So you see the potential here. You're still withdrawing some money, but the market, since it grows on average of 10%, keeps you afloat and actually, in realistic terms, keeps on growing your actual monetary value of your portfolio. As people grow and evolve though, their life goals might change. You might decide to have a child, you might decide to move to a different country, or even start a new career. If you do decide to follow this lifestyle though, according to a 2023 Fidelity report, individuals who adopt this lifestyle of a higher savings rate and strategic investments are more likely to achieve retirement goals 15 to 20 years earlier than traditionally planned. It doesn't say that a lot of people achieve their retirement goals on time, it's just that you're more likely to retire early. So if that's what you want, this does seem like a good way to get started. Ultimately, it all depends on the type of lifestyle you want when you actually retire, which is why there's divisions amongst the FIRE community, with different kinds of FIRE, quote unquote. The first kind is lean FIRE, retiring minimally with frugal living. This requires extreme budget discipline, with individuals often adopting a minimalistic lifestyle, spending only on the basics like housing, food, transportation, and healthcare, and maybe some sort of entertainment expenses. These people often live in smaller homes, drive older vehicles, and avoid luxury items or services. The average American household, for example, spends around $66,900 in expenses. However, lean FIRE participants aim to spend as little as $25,000 to $40,000 a year, depending on their location and personal circumstances. This means you could retire on as little as $500,000 to $1 million, significantly lower than those pursuing a more comfortable form of retirement. That is also why most lean FIRE participants tend to be much younger, often retiring in their 30s or 40s. The opposite of lean FIRE is fat FIRE, a more comfortable and luxurious lifestyle. These people want to have a higher standard of living and maybe indulge in discretionary spending, the biggest of which is travel. So a lot of people, when they talk about retiring and traveling, are in fact talking about fat FIRE. The key here is to save aggressively, maybe even having a savings rate of up to 70%. This is because if you're on Fat Fire, you would need a retirement fund of $2 million or more depending on the lifestyle that you want. But taking into account travel and other discretionary expenses, $2 million seems to be the minimal amount required for this sort of lifestyle. The third type of FIRE aims to focus on the fact that people who pursue FIRE don't really hate work, they want to pursue meaningful work. Barista FIRE. This is a middle ground for individuals who want financial independence but still want to work part-time in a job that is perhaps low stress or in something that they're actually passionate about. This is also more realistic since a saving goal of $500,000 or even $1 million may not seem to be realistic for most people. In fact, in 2022, Gallup found out that 40% of Americans say that they plan to work part-time in retirement just as a means of occupying themselves, generating income, or just as a passion in something that they actually enjoy. This aligns with the principles of Barista FIRE. And if you can earn an additional $15,000 to $20,000 a year from part-time work, supplementing the income that you generate from your retirement savings, it could lead to a more stress-free and balanced life. The last version of FIRE that I could find was Coast FIRE. Essentially, individuals following this lifestyle aim to save aggressively when they're young. This is because the compound effect is way more amplified the younger you start saving. For example, if you save aggressively in your 20s and mid-30s and amount $2 to $3 or $400,000, since you're very young, the 8% to 10% compounding effect every year of the stock market could mean that you have millions of dollars when you're 65 or 70 years old. So the focus here is saving aggressively when you're young so that you can have reduced work pressure and enjoy life more the older you get, ultimately leading to the coasting point, quote unquote. Now, we've talked a lot about what is FIRE and how you actually get there, but is this even possible? I looked at a lot of case studies and talked to a few individuals pursuing this lifestyle. I came up with 3 different categories. The first category is someone that has a high income and high savings rate. For example, a software engineer or a management consultant, investment banker earning above 6 figures, usually in the mid 100s. So I'm talking about $120,000 to $140,000. These people maximize contributions to tax advantage accounts like the 401k or the IRA in America, or the RRSP or the TFSA in Canada, usually investing in index funds, and keep their lifestyles to a very minimal. Someone that is making $150,000 a year can easily afford a lease on a fancy car or a very expensive penthouse, but they don't do that and make that sacrifice to save heavily by saving around 60 to 70% of income. Their goals usually are to achieve this lifestyle after 10 to 15 years, accumulating over $1.5 million to $2 million in investment, or Fat Fire. The second group of people is middle income with moderate savings. For example, a couple that are both working in admin jobs or corporate jobs with combined earnings of, let's say, $80,000 to $85,000 a year. These people live more frugally, cutting expenses to save 35 to 40% of their income. This requires some sacrifice. For example, they don't travel as much as the first group that we talked about, or maybe they don't eat out as much as the first group that we talked about. The investment style here is also in low fee index funds. The target here is to save 30%, and after 15 to 20 years, hopefully accumulate $900,000 to $1 million depending on the growth rate of your investments to support their lean FIRE lifestyle. If they choose to work more, maybe 20 years or 25 years, they could actually switch this lean FIRE lifestyle to more Fat FIRE. The third case study, and a few people that I know fall into this, is lower income that requires some creative solutions. For example, a teacher earning $50,000 or $55,000 a year, or someone working in an admin job earning the same, maybe working in a government job and earning the same. These people usually combine frugal living with creative income generation. I know someone who's a teacher, is also tutoring on the side and freelancing and participating in the gig economy. Another person also chooses to live with roommates to significantly decrease their cost of living. And despite their lower income, they're able to save 20 to 30% of their earnings. And after 15 to 20 years, they're aiming to achieve Coast FIRE or Barista FIRE by continuing to work part-time and having more flexibility while their investments grow and pay for their living expenses. Hopefully this clears the misconception that only wealthy people can achieve FIRE. People from all backgrounds can do it. It just requires a different level of commitment and maybe more sacrifice. Another misconception is that you have to live miserably, have a deprived life, and cut out all pleasures and luxuries, literally be a zombie while you're achieving FIRE. This is not the case. You have to reduce your unnecessary expenses and save higher, but this does not mean giving up everything that you enjoy. It is about focusing on intentional living, spending on what brings the most value value and cutting out wasteful spending. A fancy car, a fancy house, and other material possessions don't bring happiness in the long run, according to several studies conducted through decades. Instead, experiences give you value. And the FIRE movement community found out that 70% of its members value experiences over material possession. So they choose to use public transportation just so that they can save thousands of dollars more in car costs while still enjoying some meaningful activities like travel. Another misconception is that it requires extreme sacrifice for decades. Sure, it does require sacrifice. You might have to sacrifice 5 to 10 or even 15 years of your life. But if you split your life into chunks from when you're born to when you retire, 10 to 15 years of your life from a 70 to 80 year period, so less than 20%, is spent dedicated to something that might give you freedom to pursue anything else you want after, that sounds like a good deal on the surface. And you don't even have to go that extreme. Vanguard found that consistent moderate savings rate of 30 to 40% of income over a 15-year period allowed people to achieve FIRE even without extreme sacrifice. Just one singular decade so that you can have decades of freedom after that. There's also the psychological argument of, well, what would I do if I retire at 35? My life would have no purpose. Well, that is the entire point. It is to find purpose outside of traditional work or money. Many retirees turn to hobbies, volunteer work, or even starting their own small businesses to stay engaged and live a fulfilled life and not just have material possessions. Maybe you like creating music. We all know that creating music does not make you money in this world where creatives are not valued enough. Although, if you don't have to worry about money, which is the entire point of the FIRE movement, you can create as much music as you want without the risk of going homeless. And you're not alone in this. This question comes to the mind of many people. But a 2023 report by the International Retirement Institute found that 65% of early retirees found fulfillment in hobbies, passion projects, or volunteer work. And a big thing to help you with this, or anybody pursuing this lifestyle, is the FIRE community. There's hundreds of thousands of people, with some subreddits that I've frequented, like r/financial independence, having over 1.8 million members. Even specific FIRE subs, like r/leanfire, have over 330,000 members. And if you pursue this journey from a community perspective, you're just more likely to be successful. The Pew Research Center in 2023 found that people who engage with online FIRE communities were 60% more likely to stick with their financial plans than those who pursued it alone. Whether you pursue this through a community or on your own, the future is looking bright. McKinsey reports that over the next decade, the cost of living for consumer goods will go down by 15 to 25% because of automation and technological advancement. Furthermore, remote work is here to stay, with 22% of Americans now working remotely full-time and an additional 19% working remotely part-time. This means that they can save $4,000 to $6,000 per year on commuting, food, and other work-related expenses. The younger generation, or Gen Z and millennials, are also more likely to take on gig work through freelancing or other opportunities. I guess at the end of the day, it's all about what you want. If you're happy and fulfilled working till you're 60 or 65, that is completely okay. But if you want something else, if you want to perhaps explore other interests or pursue passion projects, the FIRE community believes this is the best way to achieve complete fulfillment. As always, smash the like button and the subscribe button if you want to learn more about money, how to make more, save more, or just understand it better. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.